Hi everyone, and welcome to another stream here with Azure Greg. Tonight I'm just going to get straight into it, so I'm going to add our guest, Keith Atherton. Keith, welcome back. How are you?
Yeah, good to be back. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, it feels like a long time ago when we spoke, but it was just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I see you're in the Keynote offices.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone appears to have the same background, and it's the Keynote office. It's not really.
Yeah, it looks a bit slicker than the real thing.
So tonight you want to do some Power Platform chatting and demos, is that right?
Yeah, exactly right. I figured a few people have asked recently, what's the Power Platform? What are Power Apps? A few people looking to career switch have asked me and a few other people for advice. So I figure it's just a good introduction for anyone who's not seen them yet.
Yeah, why not? Do you want to just chat about it first, or you want to just jump straight into demos? What would you like to do?
Yeah, you know what, we can chat first. I can give you like a bit of background as well. And I guess for anyone who's not met me before, just a bit of background about me. So I'm Keith Atherton. I've been a developer for over 20 years. I've worked throughout the UK and the US. These days, I work with Power Platform, Azure, and .NET. They're really the main three that I use, but sometimes it requires other things depending what the client needs as well. If anyone needs to connect with me, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and Twitter. So feel free to connect. If you've got any questions, I'm always happy to help.
Hi, Susheta. Good to have you.
Hi, Susheta.
Yeah, looking forward to having this session as well. So yeah, we'll cover off of your Twitter and places to get in contact with you towards the end. Right. So tell me a bit about how long have you been doing Power Platform for?
So it's been about a couple of years in terms of doing it for the day job. Before that, I dabbled with Power BI and Power Apps and a few things as well before that. But really, the last couple of years, it's been hands-on. In fact, I use it pretty much every day at the moment as well. So yeah, quite a bit.
I know nothing about Power Platform. Absolutely nothing. So I'll have all the idiot questions coming up pretty soon. Like, what's this for?
Right. No, that's great. No stupid questions. Ask away.
Yeah, okay, right. Let's just jump in. So you've got some demos for us. What are you going to demo? What sort of stuff can we expect to see?
Yeah, so what I was looking to do is just give a bit more background on Power Platform and Power Apps. Some people don't know the difference between the terms, so just explain what that is. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and create a Power App, just something very simply, just to show how quick things are, how intuitive it is. And then one thing I wanted to show is a bit of a buzzword these days with AI, but there is a Copilot for Power Apps where you can actually build an app just by using a prompt. So shouldn't take too long. We can build an entire app, the data tables as well, just within a few minutes.
Ah, nice. Looking forward to that. Right, let's start talking about it. Let's get into it. Let me add your screen to the stream. All right. Now, do you mind if I... Oh, is your screen not sharing?
Let me just go ahead and... right. It should be there. Let me see. I'll go ahead and re-present that.
Okay, let me just add the screen again. No, it doesn't seem to like it. That's blocked earlier. Not working.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You had it there for a moment.
I don't know, sorry. Maybe it just takes a couple of seconds. No, it should be thinking about it. It's not technical. I've had nothing but technical difficulties this week. Like, my lights don't work. I've got one light working and one light not.
Trust me, Power Apps is quicker than this as well. It's slicker than this, so don't you worry.
This is like the fourth technical problem I've had this week. I'm not sure why it's removing. Let me just...
I'll go ahead and stop the screen. Let me go ahead and try and present again.
Yep. Yeah. This is a
share screen. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I've missed something. There we go. I've just tried to present again.
Try it. Doesn't look like it's wanting to do it. This is going to be some demo.
Trust me, guys. It's brilliant. Yeah. No. Really.
I'm not really sure why it's doing that.
Hey.
Oh, well, it just took like half an hour. Okay. My internet's not the best, so might be something to do with that. Wait, let me get rid of my logo because my logo's in your road. That logo.
Nice
one. I tell you what to do. Do you mind if I take us out and just do that so the screen's full size? Would that be all right?
Yeah, works for me. That's perfect.
Okay, see just one last time. See the bottom of the screen, it says stop sharing. Just click on hide to the right.
Oh, Good shout. Thanks, bud.
That's why I mute now, so I don't talk through your demo.
No, that's fine. And if you do have questions, just ask away as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing I was just going to mention, again, a bit of a primer for anyone who's not seen or used the Power Platform or Power Apps. I must admit, when I was using .NET and Azure, and I was new to it, I didn't know what the different Power terms were. I'd heard of Power BI, I'd heard of different things, but I wasn't quite clear what all the differences were. So in a nutshell, when we see the screen here, this is just the Microsoft marketing page for Power Platform. Power Platform, I always see it as the umbrella term. So Power Platform, a bit like Azure, that's just the term for the entire platform. But like Azure, there's services within it. So like I say, Power Platform is the actual platform itself. And if we go further down, we can actually see there's like 5 main services that we have. So the ones that we've got here, we've got some screenshots just on the right-hand side. So just to go through these really briefly is Power BI, which we've got displayed a screenshot there. This can do a lot of things with data, but some of the main features really are reports and dashboards. And that's shortchanging it a bit. There's actually a lot you can do with Power BI. The thing we'll be looking at today is Power Apps. And as the name suggests, it's where you can create apps. In this case, it's internal web apps. So you can run them in a browser, run them on any device. You can make them responsive if you need to as well. And there's a lot of power with them. So this is probably where I spend most of my time being a developer, and I architect solutions as well. But apps are quite a common use case for me. So it could be modernizing an existing thing that's using an older system, or bringing a paper-based system or an Excel-based system into an app that people can use on the move. They can use it on a PC, just within the browser anywhere. So really, Power Apps is kind of like the main focus of today's talk. Another option is Power Pages. Now, this is like a public-facing website. So whereas the Power Apps are really internal-facing web apps for people to use within an organization, the Power Pages are external-facing. There's a really good designer. You can build up the pages with branding. It's very drag and drop, very intuitive, like a lot of the Power Platform. But the great thing with them as well is that you can have authentication and account management within Power Pages as well. So a bit like using Amazon or another website, if you want to go into your own area to look at orders, whether you're a customer or a vendor or a partner or something, Power Pages has got features available for things like that. You can put sites in maintenance mode, you can do updates, you can do all kinds of things. Really good. Power Automate is a really good bit of glue that goes between many parts of the Power Platform. This is where you can automate processes. So you can have them run on a schedule, like a daily refresh. You can have them that triggered by different events. So let's say an email arrives with a certain subject line, or a tweet is sent by a certain account. You can then let it take an action or several actions, like send an email here or save the email attachments to OneDrive. And there's a lot of different systems you can connect to. One thing that it uses is something called connectors, which is really just like a wrapper around APIs, which means we can connect to lots of different systems. So again, things I mentioned there like OneDrive, SharePoint, but also lots of non-Microsoft systems as well. So, you know, Dropbox and Google services as well. There are many others that you can connect to. And the very last one, the last of the 5, are Power Virtual Agents or chatbots, really. That's what that means. And as you could probably tell from the image there, that is like a drag and drop interface again, where you can build up this visual flow of what the chatbot would do. So you may ask a certain question. There's some AI in there for the natural language processing to say, okay, this user's really asking what our opening hours are for this store. They'll actually go away and present the information to the user. But you can make them a bit more sophisticated as well and have branching logic. So you can present options to say, okay, looks like you want to make a booking or you want to modify a booking, choose A or B. So you can present menu options. Depending on the customer's response, you can then go down that branching logic to perform the actions. So really that's in a nutshell what all 5 are. The thing that kind of keeps them in common is that, again, they're quite intuitive, easy to use. And that's one of the big selling points that I think Microsoft go for, is that whether you're technical or non-technical, there will be some kind of learning curve to get started with them, but it's not as steep as, say, building an app using C++ or using ASP.NET or using MVC or something. This is lots of drag and drop. There can be code involved, and there can be more kind of pro code, as they call it as well, kind of OO code and using .NET and things like that if you need to extend beyond the out of the box behaviors. But many things can be done with no code, or at least you can use no code to get 90% of the way there, but then maybe rely on a developer to add some customization if you need to. So Greg, I've gone on a bit there. Any questions with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've got a couple that spring to mind, but Sushita's saying that she's found using Power Automate flows easy enough for someone who's not a developer. So that's always good.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Thanks, Sushita. And I found the same again. I've had that sort of professional developer experience for many years. So, the coding part was something I was comfortable with. But as you say, using the tools, Power Automate's a really good one as well. You could just drag and drop. You can revert to previous versions or change things easily in many parts of the system. So, yeah, I've enjoyed the learning curve so far.
She's also got this question.
So, yeah, the question there, do Power Automate flows turn off automatically if not run for a specific period of time? I found really with Power Automate flows is they just process when I call them, whether that again be on the schedule, so a certain time of day or every hour, or if it's event driven. So it's just event driven, like it's listening for the event, such as in the email come in or a tweet being sent. The other option as well is you can have immediate ones. So you just, when you click the button, whether it's on your mobile device or just in any browser, they fire off then. But I found that they're not constantly running away. They're not constantly polling, listening for anything in my experience. It's just when they called, that's when the processing occurs.
I have two new questions for you because I know nothing about this. You'll see how daft my questions are. How do I even start with this? Like, is there a portal that I go to, or do I need a license, or what?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So that was something that kind of got me by surprise when I started with Power Apps. I'm so used to, as a developer, installing things like Visual Studio, SQL Server Management Studio, and all these client apps to perform all these actions. Visual Studio Code as well. Now, what I found is building most of these parts of the Power Platform, because it's cloud-based, a bit like the Azure portal, much of it you can do actually within the browser. And we'll look at this in a moment with Power Apps. But I think 90% of the tools that I've used are just within the browser. So for example, right here, this is the Power App Studio that we're seeing right now. And in a moment, we'll go through and we'll create a really basic Power App just to see how we can do it within the browser. One of the few exceptions are some of the other tools for Power BI. There's a Power BI desktop, which you install, which has got the full feature set of everything to build the reports. But then you can actually publish them up into the web portal once you're ready. And another thing as well is that you can have RPA, or robotic process automation, which is the actions I'm performing on the screen right now, the clicks, the navigation. You can actually automate quite a bit of that actually done on the PC and actually play it back like a macro. So you can do that with one of the Power Automate features called Power Automate for Desktop. So there are some edge cases, but most of it you can actually do in the browser. Nice. Now, the other thing you mentioned there about the licensing, that's a really good question. So there is a really good website. Actually, let me bring this across. Here we go. Let's bring this up. So I found that the licensing, there's quite a lot of nuances with the licensing. And this website, this Microsoft Get Licensing Ready, really helps. So there's just some free information here. It's for Power Platform, Azure, on-prem tools, and many more as well. So you can actually watch a video. It explains how the licensing works for M365, or again, for these different services. You can take a small exam at the end as well, and they give you a certificate just to say, you've understood enough about, Power Platform licensing. Now with Power Platform as well, there are lots of different licenses for the different services. Now, some of them you do need to pay, and it might be, let's say Power Apps, you might pay per app per month, or you might pay per user per app per month. There's kind of different plans. You can also do things a bit like Azure's pay-as-you-go. You can use some pay-as-you-go pricing as well. Let's say if you've got some Power Automate flows that you just use for quarter end for some financials, and you don't want to be paying every month for that. You can just do that to, well, I only really use it 1 in 3 months. I could just do pay per use. It counts me as one active monthly user, and you just get charged for that. So there's quite a few options. Now, one last thing I'll say about the licensing, because it's quite niche, depending on, excuse me, again, which service that you choose. Some of the licensing is actually included with Microsoft 365 licenses. So if you have an E5, you've got access to some of these services already. So you've got a good starting point. However, whether you've got licensing or not, there are free trials for all 5 services in the Power Platform. So you can at least give them a go.
Your screen went off there, so I'm not sure why it did that.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, I'll put it back to normal again. Cool.
Nice one. Any other questions before we crack on?
No, I think we're good so far.
Awesome. Okay, so what I'll do then is I'll actually just go ahead and create a Power App. Again, that's probably going to be the main focus of this session. I'll create one manually first, but then we'll get on to using the Copilot to create one just using the natural language processing as well. And again, I should say that the Copilots are in all parts of the Power Platform pretty much that I've seen. So within Power Automate Flow, you can actually use Copilot, say, create me a flow that saves email attachments to OneDrive, and actually figure out what you mean, go ahead and create the flow as best it can for you. Right. So what we'll do is I'm just into a portal right here. This is my personal environment that I've got. Again, this is all browser based. You can see on the left, we've got this home. We've just got this banner here. We've got some kind of quick navigation to other things. We can create an app based on the data. So we could just point it to say SQL Server database or an Excel spreadsheet, and then actually kind of build an app around that data for us to give us a good starting point. Some other options, we can start with a page design. We've got different layouts. Let's go ahead and have a quick look at this one. So you can say, okay, I kind of want this kind of layout, this one here. I want things with sidebars or split screens. So it could just be a good starting point to say, well, I don't want to design it from a complete blank canvas. I want some kind of starting point for that layout. And we'll go to this one. This one's really useful if you're getting started as well. So if you're brand new to this, starting with an app template could be really useful. So you've got things where it's centered around the data. So you can say, well, I'm using something called Dataverse. I'll mention more on that in a moment, but Dataverse is the Power Platform's data storage solution. So whenever we see that, that's one that they provide. You're not forced to use it. Again, you can use SharePoint lists. You can use SQL Server or Azure SQL. You can use on-prem. There are options to use on-prem if you need that option. So yeah, there are plenty of options to start from that data point of view. Other app templates we do have, if we go further down here, we can see these are kind of based around a solution. So let's say if you just want to say, well, I kind of like the layout of that looks quite cool. You might just be able to click on that, create an app from it, and it gives you a good starting point. And then you can look under the bonnet, say, okay, well, how does that button click save the record? How does clicking that menu item change the screen for me? So these could be, good to kind of get ideas and steal ideas. How does it do that? Another good thing is work might ask you like, oh, we really want something to manage Service Desk. Oh, that's handy. There's a template for that. You might be lucky enough to find a fairly close match for what you need. In that case, you can actually just go ahead and use that as the starting point.
Can I ask a quick question here?
Yeah, go for it.
Can you create templates and share them with other people in your company?
That's a good point. Actually, last time I checked, I wasn't able to do that, but I don't know if that's changed in the meantime. That's a good question. I know when I started with this a couple of years ago, like in earnest, some good samples, Power App samples that have been shared by the community as well. Let me see if I can bring some of those up actually.
Because my next question was going to be, could you create templates and kind of put them on a marketplace for this? But you're about to show me something like that, I think.
Yeah, kind of similar actually. There's a couple of options. That's a great question because part of the Power Platform here, you can see, again, I'm focusing on Power Apps today, but you can also share automate flows, PVAs, those virtual agent chatbots. So there is a way you can submit them to the community, the Microsoft Power Platform community, and if they get approved, so Natalie's created a really good one here for KPI use case. Depending on the numbers put in, there's some conditional formatting that actually change the values. So you can see, small GIFs or screenshots of how they're used. That's a really good one there, calling a connector. It's called Chuck Norris API to get random things back. Craig's done a great one here about parsing JSON and things. So there are many options here. You can get some good inspiration from these and download them, give them a go yourself as well. And what I've done before as well, actually for the Festive Tech Calendar and for other events, is I've actually hosted my own within GitHub as well and just shared the link with people so they can actually grab the app if they want to as well. The great thing I would say about the community ones, they've been approved, so you know what the app is when you're importing it. It's a good trusted source of kind of safe apps to use. With GitHub, I suppose you could upload anything probably. Okay, so I think that's kind of the main place I would go to. What I can do, I can go ahead and just create a very basic app just to get started. So let's get out of here for a moment. Oh yeah, so just within the portal, again, we'll look at creating in a moment. Again, you could create it either from scratch using a blank one, or if you did build a template, you could maybe save that as an app within your organization, and then that could be a good starting point when you create apps going forward. It's got the branding you want, the menu system you want. Instead of build all that from scratch, you can save that as a template app, if you will, clone the app, and then that can be your starting point. So it's kind of a workaround to get a template going there. We mentioned some of the other options. You can build from Dataverse, SharePoint, Excel, and some others as well. Another cool option, a couple of options really, is from here as well. We won't demo these today, they take a bit longer, but you can actually draw an image just on a piece of paper. Here's my buttons, here's this, here's the drop downs, and you can actually upload the image, and in many cases it can actually build the app based on the image that you've drawn on a piece of paper. It'll recognize what text inputs are, labels, buttons, and so on. So again, if you like paper and pen to design things, or even using a graphics tablet, that can be a good option too. Another option is using Figma. So if you create some UI wireframes, there's a way that you can upload that design and actually build the app based on that design you've created in Figma. So very, very handy, particularly if you've got designers and UI experts who are using Figma already. It could be a good starting point to create that app. All right, so what I'll do is I'll go through here and actually just go ahead and create a new app. So I'll go ahead and do Canvas. Now there's a few different types of apps here. So Canvas just means that we've got the full canvas, like a blank canvas, and we can have full control over the UI. That's probably the best way of putting that. So we're not kind of limited or restricted in any way. Model driven means it's actually based off the data model. So this is really where you define the data tables, the data model, and the UI is actually auto-generated for the most part based on the data model. So if you've got people who are maybe not so technical, they don't have development expertise, or you just need a basic UI, which is just forms and grids, something straightforward, with minimal customization, model driven could be a good option. And there's websites as well. But what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do Canvas. So we go ahead and get the blank canvas. When we start, we can choose between tablet or phone layouts, depending what you need. I'll just do tablet today to kind of fill the screen that we have for most PCs, this layout. And then we're in the Power App Studio now. So this is where we can create the app, modify existing apps. So I won't go through all the options, but we've got kind of like a ribbon bar across the top with all the common options. We can insert controls into this canvas. So this is where the main app is. This is the canvas itself. And this is what's just named at the moment, screen 1. We can add multiple screens if we wish. And when we have something selected in this tree view, whether it be a screen or a control within the screen, we've got properties on this right-hand side as well. And when we need to add code, we've got this formula bar right here to add code. So we'll do that in a moment. So what we'll do, first app, blank screen, I'll go ahead and I'll put a button on there. And as I mentioned before, it's quite drag and drop, it's quite intuitive. It's easy to resize and reposition things just by dragging. You don't need to write the code from scratch to position things and worry about the kind of layouts of things. It's quite straightforward. What I'll do for this button, I'll just, I don't know, I'll just call it show message on the text. So you can just change things quite easily. Let's say I'll get rid of those rounded corners. So yeah, it's quite quick and easy. We can change colors. We've got a lot of control over the different properties for this. But we can see we can enter the values in the properties right here as well. We can change how the text is laid out. We can actually change the bold level of the text as well, lots of options. But when we want to add a bit of code behind, what we need to do is have the component selected, go to advanced, and then on select is almost like on clicking of the control in this case. So I'll go here, I can expand this box, which is the formula bar. Now the code we use, it's not really like .NET, it's not like C# with full OO capabilities. It's more kind of like Excel formulas. It's a lot more plain language, easy to read, easy to understand. So if you're familiar with Excel formulas, many of this would seem familiar, using sum and average and things like this. So what I'll do is I'll just add and put a message in there. And then to preview the app, we go ahead and click on this, give it a click, and we get a message at the top. And kind of that's it. You know, to get up and running with your first app, add a control, one line of code. You know, obviously it's super basic, but it's just a way that we can actually get up and running very, very quickly. And again, we can add more screens, more controls. I'll go through some of those. We've got things like text labels, standard things you would see in most line of business apps. Let's say, you know, different edit forms, text inputs, and so on. Gallery is just a way of laying things out in a gallery, like a photo gallery. Lots of different input options as well. You've got rating controls and sliders and things like this. So I'll just go ahead and throw a few of these on there. You can actually change the properties quite easily to say, well, I want that out of 10 actually. I'm not going to start with the default value. Well, I want a 0 to start with just there. Could change colors, change set borders, so on and so on. So I want some pen input. Let's say someone's using the app, they're going to sign it with a stylus to give a signature. That's one way that you've got the control to provide that kind of input. So yeah, there's actually quite a lot of options that we can go in there and make it as sophisticated as we need. And again, if we're doing things that are a bit more code intensive, again, we can use this formula bar and actually add that kind of code in there to perform those kind of options. So I've talked for quite a bit there. Greg, does that make sense? Is that straightforward?
Yeah, that's a cool one. I've never really seen this before. Yeah, it reminds me of Windows Forms. Same sort of, yeah, back in the day when you could do .NET Windows Forms. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, you're right, actually. It's kind of like you can drag and drop things on and resize them easy. And
yeah, easy to do.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. You can set images as well. So a few things on the left, I'll actually just expand this for a moment. So again, I've kind of focused on a few basic controls within the app itself, but when you're in here, there's many ways of getting to the same option in this place. So, you know, I showed the insert menu there. Again, there's input controls, different ways of displays. You could put HTML text in there as well and actually provide your own SVG images or CSS for styling within there. So that could be quite powerful as well. Different ways of laying things out as well. Media, this is where you can upload images and audio as well. So you might want a sound when you click on the button, or you know, if you're creating a game or something like that, you can actually make it a bit more interactive. Common things, barcode readers. You can do 3D objects as well, so you can actually create augmented reality apps using Power Apps as well, which is, you know, pretty cool. Lots of icons out of the box as well. There's many good standard ones, but you can always import your own if you've got your own set, or using Google Material Design or something else as well. So you're not limited to these by any means. There are different shapes as well as the icons, some basic charts. So with these charts, you can actually create some basic things like column charts, line charts, and pie charts. But really, if you want the full power of good reporting in there, you can actually use a Power BI tile and then actually embed that Power BI report actually within the app. And then you've got the full slicing and filtering and sorting that Power BI provides for you as well. So there's a good few options there. There's also plenty with the AI builder. Now, when we see this little icon on the right-hand side, as the tooltip says this, a premium license is needed. So for some of the cool things, like the AI stuff, you do need premium licensing, which goes back to that per app licensing and the other examples that I mentioned earlier on as well. But many of these others are actually just standard features you don't need to pay any extra for. Excuse me, and then also mentioned the mixed reality there as well. So you can view it in mixed reality, you can view shapes in there, place shapes on there and do lots of different things as well. So really, really cool.
A lot of tools. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's really grown over time as well. I think when I started maybe tentatively 4 or 5 years ago, just playing about, maybe more with Power BI and a bit with Power Apps, it looked a little different, but there's so many new features added since that it's really kind of expanded the capabilities. So what I'll do as well, if I expand this, so again, we saw the tree view, the insert is just another way we can get to this insert menu, that's fine. Data is the bit we kind of touched upon. When you build the app, you can say, okay, I want to add some data. I want to do it from these Dataverse tables that I mentioned, or use different connectors for my Office 365 users. And then you can actually query the users within your organization, provide their details, the profile photos, anything within the app that you need to do as well. Many other connectors, there's actually, I think it's over 1,000 these days, because Microsoft provide their own, but there's also third-party services, or also people like you and I can actually publish our own connectors as an independent publisher if we wish to. So let's say you're using some old legacy system that's not very commonly used, but the API is exposed to it. You can actually use that API definition to build your own connector, which is really just a wrap around the API, call the service, and actually put it up on the marketplace.
Are they normally free, the connectors?
Many are. Many of these sort of standard free connectors, but some are premium.
Right.
So yeah, so there are a mix actually. Let me bring these across. So let me see if I go to SQL Server, for example, that is a premium connector. So if I was using Azure SQL, or if even an on-prem SQL, which is possible with Power Apps too, even though it's cloud-based, you can use something called an on-premises data gateway to manage the traffic between cloud and on-prem. But if you're using that is a premium connector, so you need the premium license for that. But if you are getting started and want to play around, you could just use Excel, which is not premium. This is part of one of the standard provided ones within that. And another common one that people use, again, it's not a relational database system, but a way of getting started is using SharePoint lists, which again, does not need a premium license. We mentioned before, there's ways of uploading the media. You've got different images and things you can provide there, and then drag them, drop them into the app itself. There's a good integration with Power Automate. So you can actually create a new flow from here. It would give you the designer. You can create that flow. Let's say when I click that button, I want it to create a draft email or send an email. I can actually create a flow to do that, or, perform some action or series of actions. There's ways you can keep track of any variables you use within the code in there. One cool thing as well is you've got some advanced tools right here. So you've got monitor. This just lets you monitor the session that you've got running. So this is if you want to debug something or you get some strange errors, you can actually keep track of the requests and responses made. Because again, under the bonnet, a Power App is really, it's just a web app. It's just a web page. So if you go to this checks the traffic, the results that come back, any error messages, and you can actually use this to optimize an app. Say, well, it's slow on load. I'm not sure why. So if you give this, you can get it in preview, do a bit of work, and you can actually see behind the scenes what's this doing. Can be useful for that.
Yeah, it's useful. Yeah.
And another handy thing as well is when I go back to these advanced tools, is there's a test studio as well. So you can actually create tests, which almost like Windrunner and some of the other tools you can do as well, is you can run through the actions and play them back to say, does this give you the behavior that you're expecting? So that can be really useful. Actually, if I just open that briefly, yeah, I'll save that. Let's go ahead and save that to the cloud. Not that it's doing very much. I don't want to share this just yet. Right, let's try that again. So I won't go through and build these, but really what you can do is you can enter a description. You can actually include some code right here. You can say select and then click on the button that I provided on the screen. And then what you can do is you can say, okay, step below this, I want to assert, again, just like doing a test within .NET, I want to perform an action and then assert that a certain thing has happened. So again, that could be useful if you need testing as well.
Yeah, I like it. That's nice.
So I think, I must admit, when I got started with the Power Apps, I did think, well, I've got a good few years of .NET. My first job was using Java. I've used plenty of other languages, things with Power, things like JavaScript and many other things. I did think that when it came to the code within this, I did think, well, would I get a bit restricted, a bit limited by the features that are there? But I would say that the features have improved over time. It doesn't match or really want to match anything like a C#, but it does provide everything I've needed. There's nothing I've come across where I've really got stuck and thought, I really can't do that. Any kind of common line of business thing, it's been okay so far. However, if you did have a really custom need, let's say if I go back to, let's see, the date picker. Let's add a date picker and give this a run. And when I click on this, so please excuse the formatting. This has gone US by default for the moment. You can change the format, but in terms of much of this control and many other controls, there are only certain things that you can change with them. Date pickers may be a bit more restricted than some others. Let's say, I want to change the color of these buttons down here, or I don't want it displayed in this. I want to change the bold or the font size or something. You may find that this is quite restricted. If I go ahead and select on it and go to the properties, now there's a good few here. We can say, okay, we've got the date time zone. We say, is it disabled, edit, and so on. We've got a few positional, transform type properties and a few basic ones here, but there's not a lot of control over it. Whereas if you was building something with, ASP.NET or some JavaScript framework, you might have a bit more control over these features. So a couple of options you can do. You can actually see if anyone in the community has built a control. That kind of gives you access to these other properties or a bit more control. One place you can go for this, actually bring this across, is this is one of many places where people have actually created their own sort of pro code or code first controls, where actually, they need to go beyond what the out of the box controls provide. They can get as sophisticated as they need. So someone's, they made a tic-tac-toe game here or a slide puzzle. Someone's got a cool looking radar chart right there. The things that you wouldn't get out of using that insert menu, you may find that someone's provided it here, or you can create it yourself and share it within the community if you want to. These are free use. They've got different copyright notices. But this is not a paid marketplace that I've seen yet. These are, you can use them, and the kind of explanation how they're used is within this gallery as well. So this PCF as well, I'll just mention what that is. So the Power Apps component framework, or PCF, this is a way you can build controls using pro code. So it'd be using TypeScript, CSS, HTML. You can use them to build up a specific looking custom control that you need for your needs. So you can build them internally. You don't need to share them publicly like these have been shared. You can actually just go ahead and just keep them internal. These are ones people in the community have actually shared right here. And this is quite a good common marketplace. You can actually see how it works. And you can see there's quite a few in there as well. So you can give it a search in there, see, I need, let's see, address finder. That's a really good use case. There's a widget, Australian specific one by the look of it, just there as well. So again, if you've got something that fits your need, here can be a good place to check. Okay, so let's go back in. Right, any other questions there, Gregor?
No, nothing so far. Yeah, so the PCF gallery, can you create your own controls and put them up? How easy is that? How do they check that you're doing something? I think it's some sort of process to validate that what you're doing is good.
Yeah, exactly right. So this one is, you can see this one's actually developed, maintained by someone in the community just there. But I've not actually published one yet, but I did have a look through this because I'm tempted to publish one myself. But there is a process right here to submit a new one. So if you've got one, you've got a form that you go to just here. Let's just jump on there as well, so we can see them on Twitter, or sorry, X. So yep, here's where the actual channel is, which is pretty good. You can see what's coming up, what people have added. Great. There's some recent tweets there, which is really cool. But yeah, you just go ahead, you fill out the information there, and then you just walk through the process right there. So it seems straightforward, but yeah, it can be really powerful to create something really bespoke, really really custom for your needs. Great. All right, let's jump back to the studio.
So if I was wanting somebody to test this out just now, how do I get them access to test this?
Yeah, good question. So if you wanted to share this with other people to do the testing or to be a co-developer on it, what we can do is, if we go up here on the bar, we've got a share option. And then we've got an option right here. So we can actually start typing in the person's name. I don't know if I'm going to find any names in here actually, because this is just my personal environment.
Can multiple people work on it at the same time, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a good point. Up until there's been a recent development on that. I can't remember if it's actually gone GA yet, but for a long time with Canvas apps, you couldn't. It was locked by one person, which was quite limiting. Most apps I've worked on have just been me, but there have been.
Probably normal.
Yeah, but there have been cases, let's say I've been working with a client. The client needs to, we've worked on a big app, say with 15 screens. They need to work on one screen while I work on another screen. So it's been a bit awkward before, where we've almost like cloned the app, worked on our own version, and then copied into almost like the main version of the app. We've kind of done clunky workarounds previously, but there has been some developments recently. And again, I can't remember if they've gone live to allow this kind of co-authoring of the app.
Okay.
That actually did happen. Oh, sorry, go
on. Is there any way to check this code into, where does this code live? Can you check this into GitHub or anything like that? Or no?
Yeah, good question actually. So actually, just one last thing on the co-authoring as well. You can do that with model-driven apps that actually became available before these Canvas apps, I should say. But with these Canvas apps, it's only recently those developments have come forward. But yeah, good question in terms of the code. Because as you can tell, there's all the controls. There's some minimal code here and there. You can export the files. That's one option. But you can actually connect this to source control if you need to as well. So let me see if I can remember where the option is. But yeah, there's an option. We've done that before, and that does allow co-authoring, which is really good. So I've done it before where we've actually put it into Azure DevOps. And then that has allowed the co-authoring for Canvas apps at the moment. Yeah, so it's really cool. You can do the reversion and all the other stuff you would do with using Git. So yeah, really powerful. It's a good way to go, to be honest.
The main reason I ask is I wouldn't like to break someone's Power App.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a really good point. Actually, if I go back here as well into this main portal, so outside of the app, if you will, again, we kind of saw the option where you could share it, you can export as a package. You've got a bunch of options right here. What you can also do is you can see the versions of the apps as well right here. So even within here, you can actually restore a previous version. Now, personally, when you use Git, you can see what has changed. You can leave version notes here, I suppose, but unless people use version notes, I don't know what the difference is easily between these two. But yeah, using Azure DevOps or GitHub, if you use Git, you can actually see those and go back to a meaningful version. So technically you can here, but I'd say nothing beats using proper source control.
Yeah, I just like to be able to go back to something that I've screwed up.
Yeah, that's it. Well, then, yeah, keep making copies of the app. Yeah, that's another way. Okay, well, if there's no other questions just now, what I can do is go ahead and show the Copilot side of things.
Yes, please. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Copilot is a fairly recent development with Power Apps specifically. There was a preview. I can't remember. It's just a few months ago the preview was announced. So what I'll do is I'll actually go ahead and let's go out of this app. Close these down. So, well, actually, just one thing before I jump to that. So, obviously, with Power Apps, it's kind of intended to be a line of business app. However, there's some really cool developers out there who've done some really clever stuff. So they have made games, different mixed reality games and things like that. So I'll go to this one. This one's been, it's called Power Apps. It's been created by Scott Duro, who is an excellent developer. I'll go ahead and play this. He's actually built a 3D racing game within Power Apps. So things like this is possible. It's maybe not the frame rate you would want, and it's not designed to work this way, but you can build things like this if you really, really want to. And I'm dreadful at playing it, so I'm going to close this down. He's also created a demo clone of Lemmings as well, and some other cool games as well, and many other people have too. So you can reach a certain level of power if you really, really need it. Anyway, Copilot. Let's have a look at Copilot. So one thing we've got in the Power Platform is this concept of environments. I'm going to jump to my US environment for this because my Copilot preview is only available in the US at the moment. So if I go back to the home bar right there, now previously we just had a banner that said, hello, do you want to create an app? But within this US one, I've actually got a preview of the Copilot right here to go ahead and create an app. So what we can do is go ahead and just give it a prompt, just ask what we want it to create. So I say, create an app to manage podcast interviews. Oh, and the way I was brought up to use please as well. Let's use that. So let's give that a crack. So what it will do is it'll work away based on what I've asked. And if I've made it clear enough, it'll actually go away and actually try and create us a data table to get started. It'll give us some dummy data. And here we go. So pretty quick, it's come up, it's given us a few columns. So we've got interviewers, interviewees, it's come up with some dates and various other things just there. Some topics, which is just a clone, but we've got these 5 records in a dummy table as a good starting point. But what we can do from here is we can actually use more prompts just to refine this. So let's say update interviewer. Well, Greg is running this, isn't it? So to Greg Assutti, let's see if it understands what I've put just there. So I really want this to be changed from John Doe to Greg Assutti for all of these records. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it takes half a minute, a minute. There we go. So Greg Assutti. Let's go ahead and 5 more rows, just get a bit more data. So the useful thing with this, for one, it can give you that good starting point. If you're working on this and you're not a developer like me, you're not technical or you're new to this, you want to get started, it can be a good way to say, well, I want to use a few prompts to build me something to get started. Could be really useful for that. Or again, just, if you give it the prompt just to give you, how would that look? What kind of table is it going to come up with? And like, oh yeah, of course I'll need a date for this. Yeah, that's a good idea. It can kind of give you that inspiration if you like. So topic, this is a bit bland. Let's try one more thing. Let's say update topic to different Azure services. Let's see if this works. Just so I get a bit of variety within there as well. I don't know if that's pushing it too far. Soon find out, see what this comes up with. So again, could be a really good starting point. Then after we've done this kind of data phase, again, this is just kind of the start of the Copilot. There are actually developments in the roadmap for Copilot. Say, I want to make more changes. I want UI and cosmetic changes. It can go further than this, but this is just the starting point for now. let's go ahead and look at this. There we go. So if I hover over that, I don't know if I can expand that more. Let's have a look. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. It's giving us different Azure services just from my prompt there. So there's some, yeah, pretty neat. So you can kind of randomize things, get some dummy data that you want in there. You can actually just say, well, let's see, I'll try one more thing. Let's say remove duration column. You know, so you can add, remove, change, add data. You can do things just with these prompts. You can rate them as well if you're happy with them. These have all been good. So yeah, all good. And then after this prompt, we'll actually go ahead and create the app, see how it looks.
Is this free at the moment, or is it paid for, or is it in preview? Or?
Yeah, this is a preview. This was an opt-in preview that I did, and it's free at the moment.
Nice.
So yeah, there we go. Got rid of that duration column that I didn't want. So let's say if this data is good enough, I'm pretty happy with this. Oh, great! It's changed the names there as well for those services, so it's reflected in the topic. Again, depends what you put. You might want to say, I want to manage my dealership. I want an app to manage site inspections, to manage code reviews. You know, you could pretty much type anything in. It's going to give you something. What I'm going to do from here, this might take a minute or so. Again, there's suggestions down here. I'm going to go ahead and create the app based on this table. So it's going to work away. Typically, this takes 1 to 2 minutes. It's not super long, but it's not usually more than 10 seconds or so. This will go away and work on building the app. Just while it does that, actually, I'm just going to go ahead and open this up. This is the page on Microsoft Learn about using this Copilot. Okay. So here we've got a public preview slated for October this year. Some of the feature details, the business value, and it kind of gives you a bit more information on the overview. Writing the formulas, that's something that's already there at the moment. You can actually, write me the code formula to do this, to change the label to red if the number's greater than 10. It'll actually go ahead and actually generate that code for you. So that actually works really, really well at the moment.
And there's here we go.
So yeah, if we go back to the app, so it didn't seem to take too long. It's actually created, one basic screen. We can see the data right there. Let's go ahead and preview this actually. So we've got like a gallery, almost like a grid just here with all that information. Again, this is the bit where we can fine tune it as a developer to say, well, that date's fine, but I don't need hours and minutes. I'll get rid of that. This is fine, but I actually don't want the time up there. I want just the name at the top and then the Azure topic, whatever it is. So as I scroll through this and select the different ones, see there, Azure Kubernetes Service, Azure Database for MySQL. So already it's just built the basics, really, kind of gallery. Here's my form. Here's how I can edit and delete. And I've got an option there to do a new one.
So where is this data stored right now?
Yeah, good question, actually. So what this has done in the background, because it's quite Power Platform centric, I'll jump to this actually. If I go back to this main portal where I was, it's gone into Dataverse, and that's been the default choice for building this in Power Apps. So if I go to this tables right here, you get lots of tables that are out of the box, things that may be used with Dynamics, but also commonly used for different apps, things like accounts, addresses, so on and so on. But what it's done in this case is actually gone ahead and created a custom table. Now, I probably want to change that to call it podcast interviews or something. But, again, I could have done that, at that Copilot stage. I just missed the name of the table. But actually, sorry, go for it.
No, that's fine. No, this is cool stuff.
So yeah, when you go to this, just a bit about this tables. Again, you can access flows and other parts of the Power Platform here that can connect to it as well. Data flows as well that can move data around. The Power Automate flows you can access from here. Now, the useful thing here with Dataverse is really I'm in tables, the Azure services. So let's say you're used to SQL Server Management Studio, used to writing SQL scripts and seeing the Object Explorer and things like this. This is almost like a kind of a web portal GUI wrapper over the top of a relational database. So you can see you can do things here like go ahead and change the columns, add relationships, like foreign keys. I can add external keys if it's syncing with external data too. We can actually see the data in here. We don't have all the columns, but we can actually go in here and actually just add some of the others. I won't add them all. hit save. There we go. They're now displaying. This is actually the GUID. This is actually the ID used for the table at the moment. So we can do things. We can edit the data here. We can actually import it and export it to Excel and other places as well. We can actually use forms and views within here, again, just like a kind of a GUI wrapper within the portal to change this. But you won't be writing any SQL scripts. This is all kind of drag and drop and combo boxes and drop down lists and things. So it's all quite straightforward. But really under the bonnet of Dataverse, there's lots of, it's built on Azure is the short version. And the main part of this is Azure SQL. So this is really a wrapper over Azure SQL for the most part. But then you've got lots of other moving parts that keep it elastic, build in the security and do the other parts of it as well. But really, it's kind of Azure SQL under the bonnet. So if we jump back to the app, just one way to see where that data is, as you say, you're like, hey, where do we see it? If I expand on the left, right here, data, where before we didn't have anything, it's actually, I can tell by the logo and the name, this is Microsoft Dataverse, and it's actually this Azure services. So I actually built the table, populated with the dummy data, and actually built in this data connection into the app for us.
Very cool.
Yeah, pretty neat. I think one of the things that won me over is how quick it is to spin something up. Often a basic thing, you know, I need a proof of concept or a prototype, and it's a line of business and it's straightforward for the most part. I could genuinely build something manually without Copilot within minutes. That might take me hours with MVC or, you know, something else. Yeah. But now we've got the Copilot, within a couple of minutes, I could build an app that would have taken me hours manually within Power App. So it seems to be getting faster and faster, which is great, really. Saves time.
Two questions, I think. Where's the code for the UI? Is there any, do you see the code for the UI, or is that just you drag it on and the controls there?
Yeah, it's a good point. There's a bit of a disconnect. Let's say you build a web app, use MVC, and you've got your Solution Explorer with all your files in Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. This works a bit differently. So what I found is that, let's say if I want to edit, so I'm in design view at the moment, I'm not running the app. If I go ahead and click on this edit button, it's trying to give a decent enough name. If I expand this formula bar, I can actually see what it's doing. Again, it's a bit more like an Excel formula. It's not C#. So it is on a per control, per property basis at the moment. However, if you were to put this into source control, you can actually see that code under the bonnet. You can actually see, so when you make a change, you can see the diff in the code when you do your commit. Another option as well is I can export this as a file, an MS app file. When you do that, you can actually open it up and it's full of YAML and you can see all the code in there. So you can do quicker find and replaces and things like that within the code if you need to.
Okay, I'm building an app in MVC just now.
Oh, nice, nice.
I'm gonna get a phone and I can do it in Power Apps. You can help me build it.
Yeah, count me in. Good.
I'm looking for something quick and dirty, and not quick and dirty, but I want something quick so I can just get up and running. Yeah, this looks nice for that. Yeah.
It's really good. I think anyone who's getting started, again, the Power Apps templates are really, really useful. As you say, if you work for somewhere where you get these Microsoft 365 licenses, or you've got your Microsoft 365 developer license, you know, which people can get, where you get your 25 users and things like that. I'll mention a bit more on that in a moment. You know, you can get started with this quite quickly and easily, personally, or with your organization potentially. One thing I'll show real quick as well is, again, I mentioned there the free trial, is that Power Apps and the other parts, they've all got 30-day free trials. So you can tinker around for 30 days and see, is it for you? You know, do you want to get started? There's all I'd recommend it, and anyone who wants to take it further, particularly with the Power Apps as well, there's also something called the Power Apps Developer Plan, which I'll just show on the screen real quick. This doesn't have a time limit. You can keep using it. You can only use it for development and for testing. You can't use it for production, but you can actually use this as long as you want and just keep playing with it. And the great thing with this Power Apps Developer Plan is that you sign up for free, it never expires, you get Dataverse, which is considered a premium feature included, and you also get Power Automate features. So you can play around with all this stuff with no time limit. and actually, just work on your own personal projects or fun things or experiments. So I'd highly recommend checking this out if you want to take it further and keep using it going forward.
Yeah, I think I will take that. Right, one last question. Susheta's going to ask this question.
Yeah, cool.
She wants me to touch on Copilot and Power BI. Is that available just now? Is that just in preview, or what's the script for that?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I think all services have. Let me just go ahead and check real quick. I've not used that one for, myself, but let me bring something up. This may be a bit more a bit more useful. So back in May, so a few months ago, Kim posted here, Microsoft Fabric and Copilot in Microsoft Power BI. Now, I have seen one thing I have used in Power BI is when I've created a dashboard, you can actually ask questions in natural language on the dashboard to say, let's say it's sales data. Okay, what was my biggest order last year? What's the average sales over the last 12 months? It'll actually understand what you're saying and bring that information back. Now, one thing I did see recently, I don't know if this is in preview or GA, but you could actually say, okay, build me a bar chart that shows months versus sales, and it'll actually go away and create the graphics, create the reports and everything for you. I saw a really cool demo on that. And again, I don't know if that's fully public GA or if it's just in preview, but yeah, I'd love to get hands-on more with these features, but I've personally not used them too much myself. But yeah, there's some good news out there. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Right, cool, great demo. Yeah, I really like that. Really looking forward to seeing more and more Copilots on these kind of things.
Yeah.
I'll definitely reach out to you after this, and we can maybe build something, because I've been doing an MVC and it's kind of cool, but this looks like it's like I want drag and drop and drop downs and drill in and that kind of stuff. And that's not easy in MVC because there's not really any components. But doing it through this would be really cool, actually.
Yeah, I found the same as well. And I think one last thing on that is the great thing with Power Apps is there's more and more support for responsive Power Apps going forward as well. So you want something on a tablet that also resizes for your phone because you're on the move, or it's something on a workshop or on a site. That's actually quite easy to build, but it's getting easier with templates for responsive apps as well. So it's almost like, not that I ever felt this was like a second class thing, but when I say it, I'm like, yeah, but where am I going to hit limitations? Where am I going to get stuck or get boxed in? But honestly, there's nothing I've not found a workaround for as yet, including creating my own custom APIs for other things. It's like, okay, there's not one available for that. I can build my own. So I'm really happy with that.
Okay, so Keith, if people want to reach out to you, where is that? I've got your Twitter is here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that's me, Mr. Keith Atherton on Twitter. Or if anyone wants to just search for my name on LinkedIn, it's just Keith Atherton. Again, I'm always happy to help if you want any advice or how to get started, or you want any links. There's some good material on Microsoft Learn as well. I'd highly recommend checking that out as well.
Brilliant. Right, thank you very much for coming on. I have learned quite a lot of Power BI. It's actually piqued my interest because I wanted to do something like that in .NET, and it was like Windows Forms, and I was like, it's been a while since I've done that, maybe 15 years. So I was like, right, just before we go, one more comment on that, just for that. That's very nice feedback.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We'll do more demos of Power BI, Power Platform as it comes out. So we'll have you back on in a couple of months' time if there's anything new come out that's pretty cool to demo as well.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. So tomorrow I'm not on. On Friday I've got Ilkan. I'm going to butcher his surname here. Yusubov, who's joining me on the stream, and we're going to be chatting about his cloud journey, cloud marathoner as well, the cloud marathoner community, and we're going to talk about infrastructure as code, and that is Friday at 7 p.m. So thanks for watching, and let's just play the outro video. Keith, thanks very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great to be back. Thanks a lot, Gregor.
Thanks.